Do you know what? What are you doing?
Well, I wanted to suckle on something and you weren't here. I know they're not as beautiful as yours, like, but any nipple in the storm. Hey, mate. Go on in.
It's not sucking on my tit. Put it in the pram.
Come on, mate. One sec. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go.
Is that milk?
Oh my God. I'm lactating. Love's stronger than biology, guys.
Welcome back, fam. Thanks for joining us. And the topic of discussion for this particular video is breastfeeding, the pros and cons, mainly the conflicting perspectives. But before we begin, let's go ahead and hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's continue to have discussions on topics that need to be discussed from both perspectives, right? The positives and the negatives, right? And let's try to share as much good information as we can. So let's begin. The article that we're basing this video's discussion on comes to us from Vox and is titled "The Many Costs of Breastfeeding." Breastfeeding isn't free and it isn't a solution to the national baby formula shortage, by Aubrey Hirsch, May 17, 2022. As I read through this article, there wasn't much reading, okay? It's solely comprised of 19 images, so there really wasn't much reading. It was more so the interpretation of panels sprinkled with tidbits of biased information. But let's move on. So in the main article, the first panel would remind you that there is a shortage of infant formula and that the prices continue to rise. Okay, why did this happen? Well, if you don't know by now, Abbott Laboratories had to shut down a facility because a couple of babies got sick and they wanted to investigate, rightfully so. Apparently, Abbott Labs produces 45%, more so the lion's share, of infant formula nationwide. So that shut down a facility, and there's ramifications behind that, but we're not going to go into it. We're just going to move on to the second panel. But there's no shortage of people on social media to blame parents themselves for this disastrous situation. Then they have here what would appear to be a white male tweeting, "Just so you know, your body already makes the perfect food for your baby and it's free." Yeah, so this is true to a degree. Yeah, it might be a safe assumption to assume that if a woman has breasts, then she might be able to produce milk for her baby, right? But as we go on in this article, that's not really the case. All right, some women can't produce milk, some women can't produce enough milk, and some women apparently just don't feel comfortable doing it. Okay? But the negative body language portrayed in this information kind of hints at this guy really doesn't want to hear any outside information, which is presented to us in the form of crossed arms. Putting aside the fact that some family situations necessitate the use of formula, rightfully so. All right, we just hinted at this earlier. Some breast surgeries would prevent the production of milk. Low milk supply, babies' needs. I've even read that some babies are allergic to their mother's own milk, right? And then there's medications that could make breastfeeding hazardous to their children or create complications. There it is here. Some birthing parents simply don't want to breastfeed, and they shouldn't have to. But the persistent myth that breastfeeding is free overlooks the real cost associated with breastfeeding. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in these first 5 panels, there's really no real information that there's a cost associated with breastfeeding. So in the first 4 panels, we saw a bit of backstory as to the differing perspectives, right? We got a guy who thinks that all breasts make milk, but then we have situations that arise that are contrary to that, and then we have just a different perspective, right? That some birthing parents just don't want to breastfeed, and they shouldn't have to. But here we start to move into some of the costs. First of all, in terms of direct expenses, breastfeeding is not really free. So let's move on to the nitty-gritty. It's at this panel where we start to get actual information. There are necessary supplies required by most lactating parents. bottles, milk storage bags, nursing bras, breast pump, nipple cream, which is true. But some of these things are reusable, like bottles, nursing bras, the breast pump. That's an initial investment. Milk storage bags, I don't know if they're reusable. Nipple cream, how much are you actually using? Who knows, man. But some of this stuff is reusable. Yeah, breastfeeding parents also generally require an additional 300 to 400 calories a day and the continuation of prenatal vitamins, the cost of which are apparent on the family's grocery bill. Of course, if there's another mouth to feed, a new addition to the family, that grocery bill is going to go up regardless. Okay? So it's irrelevant if you're breastfeeding or not. But the additional 300 to 400 calories that are required, that really shouldn't be an issue either. Americans are notoriously overweight. According to an article by therichest.com, their top 10 fattest countries in the world, the U.S., is number 2. Okay? So getting those extra calories shouldn't be a problem. Okay? It's not how much you eat, though. It's what you eat. Yeah, continuing on. And many people require lactation support, which comes at a price. Breastfeeding classes are $30. Lactation consultants, $200 an hour. These costs can be negated or even ignored if you had a family member that breastfed. Maybe they could tell you how to do it. Maybe if your aunt, grandma, or maybe your cousin, if someone was in your family where you could talk to them, get their advice, use what they know, you could sidestep these extra expenses. So there's really no cost there. It's a matter, are you willing to call your cousin, call your aunt, whoever? There's also Facebook groups that can help breastfeeding moms get information and even find support, such as the official Milky Mama Lactation Support Group. They got over 31,000 members. Then there's Mama Milk Breastfeeding and Lactation Support. They got over 39,000 members as well. So the issue really isn't cost. It's, are you willing to seek out information? Okay. The Flautas Foundation puts the monetary cost of breastfeeding at around $950 for the first year, compared to $1,200 for a year of infant formula. Interesting. Yeah, you could save $300 just by breastfeeding. Yeah, that would cover the total cost of the equipment listed earlier in the article. The equipment listed earlier in the article came to $227. That's still less than the $300 in savings you would have from breastfeeding. So right here we can see that the article is contradicting itself, that the cost of the equipment really isn't prohibitive in any way. For the most part, you tend to break even if one should breastfeed. So far, it would seem as though the issue really isn't that there's a significant cost in breastfeeding. It's more so a matter of prerogative, not the savings people are claiming. So that wraps up the direct costs, but now we move into the indirect costs, which are assumed to be even higher. The data shows that mothers who breastfeed for 6 months or more experience longer and more severe income loss than mothers who formula feed. Then they have a chart here that assumes that right after birth, the mother's income drops drastically, and then it stays low throughout the duration. But this assumes that birthing mothers are not resourceful enough to find ways of providing additional income. So this is indirectly putting forth the idea that birthing mothers should opt to work and not breastfeed. And breastfeeding is only free if you think lactating parents' time is worthless. For that, we're gonna look at Michaela Rose Becker, who's a TikTok content creator with over 27,000 followers and over 1 million accumulated likes.
This is my current stash. It's actually more now, but it's around like 700 ounces, and my daughter's like 5.5 weeks old. She's exclusively breastfed, so this is all just from my Haka. I've only pumped a few times. I have donated around 200 ounces to a mom that has a baby in the NICU that's local, and I've also sold to some local moms. I have postpartum anxiety and depression, so I am on Wellbutrin, so therefore I cannot donate to a milk bank. But if you aren't on medications, you can donate to a milk bank, and I would look up Tiny Treasures. That's what I was going to do. If not, there's tons of Facebook groups that you can join as well to sell there. If you need those direct links, you can just send me a message on my Instagram and I can send those to you. I am an advocate for selling your breast milk because people do not understand the amount of time and effort and your own cost that goes into this.
All right, so she explains that she can sell her milk if she chooses to do so. And she is also aware of Facebook groups that can help women with lactating issues, whether to purchase milk or even sell it. And we also have another TikToker who's also a YouTuber by the name of Ashley No Swiper 1. Yeah, she's smart enough to figure out that you don't have to be tied down to some rocking chair just to breastfeed, when Amazon sells wireless breast pumps. So this is contrary to what the article would put forth, that there's really no cost benefit to breastfeeding. Some women have the uncanny ability to produce more milk than required for their kid. This would allow them to sell this at a profit while also helping the less fortunate women out there. So it's not an issue as to whether your time is worthless. It's really an issue of whether you're using your time effectively. Okay? According to the estimates by Inc. contributor Amy Nelson, the amount of time spent breastfeeding in a year is nearly equivalent to the hours worked in a full-time job. Only there's no pay. There it is there again. It's the assumption that there's no money to be made. There's nothing to be gained if you're breastfeeding. But now we move from the indirect cost to the health-related cost. There are also costs to the parent's physical health and emotion. Some of these issues actually come about through time. Some of these things, such as back pain, inadequate sleep, carpal tunnel, you could get those in the workplace. Osteoporosis happens with time. Plugged ducts, engorgement, cracked nipples, fungal infections. Yes, that does happen from breastfeeding, and I've seen it myself. I have 2 kids, so I can say that. Okay, I've seen it firsthand. But if we look at the emotional health, judgment from strangers, significant loss of time, exhaustion, loss of bodily anonymity. Doesn't that just happen in the workplace? You go in the workplace and what do you see? Strangers judging you, judging everyone, mind you. It's not just women or moms who get judged. Significant loss of time, that happens. Exhaustion, that happens. Loss of body anonymity. I think that would happen whether you're breastfeeding or not. You know, in regards to judgment from strangers, there's companies who've gone out of their way making concessions for breastfeeding mothers. They got different lounge areas, different safe spaces. Hell, man, in some ladies' washrooms, there's a couch there just so that they can breastfeed comfortably in the bathroom. Okay? Out of view from prying eyes, right? When you tell lactating parents there's no cost to breastfeeding, what you mean is that their time, their work, and their physical and mental health have no value. Otherwise, breastfeeding really isn't free. Like I said before, this article is all fear-mongering. Well, we've gone through every single panel on here to point out the information that's contrary and what's being left out in this article. And if we look at an article by She Knows the Benefits of Breastfeeding for You and not just the baby. Okay, so this is going to go into the health benefits of breastfeeding. Okay, it's not just all bad like Vox and Miss Aubrey Hirsch would have you believe. According to the article, a January 2018 30-year national study published in JAMA International Medicine showed that compared to women who didn't breastfeed at all, breastfeeding for 6 months or more across all births slashed a woman's risk of developing type 2 diabetes by half, while breastfeeding for a shorter duration, 6 months or less, reduced the risk by 25%. So, breastfeeding actually reduces diabetes in the ladies. Okay, another study was published in that same month of that same year in the American Journal of Hypertension, looked at more than 3,000 non-smoking postmenopausal women and found that those who nursed children and nursed them for longer periods of time were less likely to suffer from hypertension after reaching menopause. Interesting, right? That's fantastic. Okay. And in February of 2018, research was presented at the American College of Cardiology's 67th annual scientific session showing long-term heart health benefits for some breastfeeding moms. Those who had normal blood pressure during the pregnancy and who breastfed for at least 6 months. In addition, breastfeeding can offer protection against breast and ovarian cancers. Now that's downright amazing. Furthermore, the obstetrician and gynecologist Dr. Alison Stube thinks that if you think breastfeeding, which can burn as many as 500 calories a day as exercise in a chair, it makes sense that breastfeeding for a long time might have some benefits. And from an evolutionary standpoint, some pregnancy weight gain is fat that moms are stockpiling because their bodies expect to lactate. When that doesn't happen, we're changing physiology, and that can have consequences for health right there. So would it be safe to say that if a mother does not breastfeed, that contributes to weight gain that she just can't get off her body? That contributes to weight gain and possibly contribute to America's obesity? Very interesting. So in summary, it would appear that this article from Vox by Aubrey Hirsch is really just poorly constructed anti-breastfeeding fear-mongering, right? It didn't explore both sides of the argument or any possibilities to make one more effective over the other. The article is solely designed to get birthing mothers to not breastfeed but yet join the workforce, even though it would come at a cost of your own health. And nowadays, we're seeing that cost economically, financially, in the ever-increasing prices of everyday goods, not to mention the skyrocketing cost of infant formula. These anti-breastfeeding arguments are not so much as designed to stop women, to stop the majority of women from breastfeeding, but they're more so designed to get women to join the workforce and abandon traditional roles. Okay? But let me know what you think. Okay? These are my findings. And if you have anything to the contrary of what I've presented to you, go ahead and comment below. And if you really enjoyed the content, go ahead and subscribe, hit that like button, and also ring the bell for notifications. Okay? All right. You guys have a nice one. Peace.